Scripture reading this morning is from Matthew chapter 28, verses 1 through 10. Now after the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to look at the grave. And behold, a severe earthquake had occurred, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came down and rolled away the stone and sat upon it. And his appearance was like lightning, and his garment as white as snow. And the gods shook for fear of him and became like dead men. And the angel answered and said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus, who has been crucified. He is not here, for he is risen just as he said. Come and see the place where he was lying. And go quickly and tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead, and behold, he is going before you into Galilee. There you will see him. Behold, I have told you." And he departed quickly from the tomb with fear and great joy, and ran to report it to his disciples. And behold, Jesus met them and greeted them. And they came and took hold of his feet and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and take word to my brethren to leave for Galilee, and there they will see me."
So I'd gone to that preaching workshop last February, late February, with the Simeon Trust, and they have a podcast that they do like once a month or something. And so I was listening to it's called Preacher's Talk, the Preacher's Talk podcast earlier this week, and they had a podcast episode on re-preaching sermons. And I was tempted to not bother listening to that one because I thought, well, I never do that. I never have an opportunity to do that because I haven't been here long enough to get away with, that. And I don't preach other places that I could, roll out something that I've preached here, right? And it was pretty amazing how many minutes I got into the podcast before I realized that that's exactly what I was going to do this Sunday. I preached on this passage on Resurrection Sunday, March 31st. It can be a bit dense at times, but in my defense, the reality is that there's a full spectrum between re-preaching like the same words from the same manuscript and preaching a new sermon on the same passage of Scripture. And there's everywhere in between. And of course, if you preach from an outline, then it's going to come out different each time. There's nothing wrong with preaching essentially the same sermon to a new audience, but since it's been less than 8 months since the last time I preached on this passage, and the audience hasn't totally changed, you'll be happy to know that this morning I'm preaching a new sermon on the same passage of Scripture. Adding part 2 to the original sermon title. They'll definitely have something in common. During the Bible study after the last time we covered this passage, we did an activity where we looked through the passage and underlined all the repeated words, phrases, or concepts in Matthew 28, the whole chapter, since it's chock full of repeated words and ideas. And yes, I took it easy on the ladies and told them which words to look for. Though, of course, you're not just looking for one word, but also the synonyms of that word. For instance, come, go, go quickly, ran, that sort of thing. Matthew uses these repeated words and concepts to highlight the point that he's trying to make with the story. So overall, I would sum up the theme of this chapter in this sentence. Fear not, but come, see, and worship the risen King. Then go and tell the disciples. And that's printed in your bulletin underneath the sermon title. So the short form of that is come and see, then go and tell. That's pretty sensible. We can latch on to that. The Lord is looking for witnesses who will become messengers. Go tell it on the mountain. Not that Jesus Christ is born, though that happened first, of course. That has to happen first. but that Jesus is the risen King, the Lord of all, to whom we owe our obedience. So fear not, but come and see and worship the risen King, then go and tell the disciples, is the theme of this first section of the chapter, or we can use the short form, come and see, then go and tell. That same theme comes back in the last section of the chapter, which is the Great Commission. But in the second section of the chapter, where the guards go to report to the chief priests, the message there is basically, forget what you saw, but go and tell people a lie. So essentially, the chief priests give the guards a cheap counterfeit version of the Great Commission. And we'll talk more about that next week. They are messengers with a message to spread, but it's an empty message and a lie. So come and see, then go and tell. We all recognize the power of a personal testimonial or a review. You know, that's part of our regular lives day to day. You know, after all, Amazon.com isn't just popular because they sell almost everything, usually at good prices with quick delivery, but Amazon is also popular because they have reviews, lots and lots of reviews. You know, if it's the platform that tons and tons of people are using, tons and tons of people are writing reviews there too. And, you know, I don't know about you, but there are times when I look to Amazon for reviews and then sometimes buy it somewhere else. Maybe that's cheating. Before buying a product, many of us may hear about it from other people who have tried it, or we may ask people we trust, or we read reviews, maybe on Amazon, or maybe we watch video reviews on YouTube or wherever else. So on my personal YouTube channel, I finally published my first gear loadout video earlier this week, where I showed all the gear and supplies I bring while kayak camping. Now, I don't have any sponsors and I don't get kickbacks if someone buys something that they saw in my video. Though certainly some people do that. But it's clear that such a video can influence people's purchasing decisions. So at least 2 people were interested in the solar charging system that I use with its waterproof case. So, ta-da. Yeah, so we've got a solar panel, we've got batteries in there, we've got, you know, a waterproof pass-through here, and waterproof connections on the cables. You know, there are plenty of solar panels and batteries out there, but most of them are not waterproof. So that generates some interest. And some of my other videos have inspired people to paddle new rivers or hike new trails. So some time ago, I ran into a neighbor down the road from me who said that he had seen one of my videos of paddling Bigelow Brook, and since then he had started hiking regularly on the Natchog Trail, which for a little bit there at least goes along Bigelow Brook. Now, my mom was kind of a natural at retail sales. You know, she was good at talking things up. Jenny's laughing. If she liked something, she felt compelled to tell people about it, right? Some of you who have been here for a while may remember the sweet and spicy tea she loved. I had quite a bit left over when she died, and I think it all eventually made its way to the church. I don't know if there's any still here. I believe her brother recommended it to her, and she in turn tried it and recommended it to everyone. Personality-wise, I'm not a natural at that like my mom was. But, I still have an influence on others. I still, come and see, then go and tell others what I've seen or what I've experienced. So have we experienced something in the kingdom? Have we had an experience with God? Have we come and have we seen, maybe not seen him, but seen what he can do? So we'll after the sermon, not just have question and answer time, but also a time to tell, what have you seen? How have you seen the Lord working? After the Sabbath, at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. So that's the setup. They were in the right place at the right time. But was that just because they were lucky? Why were they there? They came to the tomb to mourn and also to check on the tomb, which the Jews usually did for the first few days after a death. But Mark and Luke tell us that they brought spices to anoint Jesus' body for burial. Clearly, they didn't expect him to rise from the dead. The high priest may have connected with the fact that they said that he would rise on the third day, but his disciples and the women were perhaps too much in shock to really expect that. Matthew 27:55 says, "Many women were there watching from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee to care for his needs." They had been faithfully caring for his needs and the needs of his disciples for a while. And now, after he was killed, they continued doing what they could to care for him. It was their faithfulness to him and love for him that brought them to the tomb that morning. It was their faithfulness and love that made them witnesses of the greatest event in history and made them the first messengers to carry the good news to others. They had been faithful as friends, and now they were chosen to be faithful witnesses and messengers. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. Matthew 25:29. Actually, Jesus said that twice in Matthew. The earth shook when the angel came down and moved the stone. The earth shook, and Jesus was raised from the dead. Even the guards shook and fell down like dead men. It's very easy for us to get into a frame of mind where we think about the material world and the laws of the material world. And if we're thinking about the laws of the material world, then we think we know what to expect. Well, there's always uncertainty in life. But, you expect if you throw something up, it's going to come back down. And it's easy for us to neglect the reality of the spiritual world. God can easily override the laws of physics, but if he does, it can tend to take us by surprise. We fully expect that what goes up must come back down, and that, dead men tend to stay dead. When God displays his power, or when he or one of his messengers shows up, his presence can be overwhelming. We don't know what to expect. The rules that we've counted on, the laws of physics, are, a little less relevant. Our materialistic mindsets are totally derailed. His power is immeasurable. His holiness is immense. And our sinfulness is palpable. When God shows up, men and women fall down in fear. Is he safe? Of course he isn't safe. but he is good. He's always good. He may totally disrupt our materialistic way of looking at things and totally upend our lives, but our lives really need to be upended to allow his life to flow into us. He isn't safe, but he is good. The guards were so afraid of the angel that they shook and became like dead men. The guards had plenty of fear, and the women were afraid too. But the angel was obviously not sent to speak to the guards, because he totally ignored them and said to the women, "Do not be afraid." The guards were not the only ones who were shaken with fear. When the women hurried away from the tomb, they were afraid yet filled with joy. Their expectations of what they were going to see and do that morning had been totally upended. God in his power had done something they did not expect, and heaven only knows what might happen next. So they were afraid, yet filled with joy. How do those things go together? Maybe that's the essence of the fear of God, the right fear of God. Maybe when you have a right and proper fear of God in your life, you're afraid in awe of his presence and power, but not with a fear that causes you to run away, but with a fear and joy that causes you to want to come near, to be able to come near. Afraid, though, because he is great and you are small. He is holy and you are not. It's only by his grace that you can come near. May we stand or fall down in awe before him, afraid yet filled with joy. The women saw Jesus and fell at his feet in fear, clasped his feet and worshipped him. He also said to them, "Do not be afraid," just as the angel said to them. We are not to live in fear. We shouldn't live in fear of the things of this world, but we absolutely should live in awe of God. It's maybe that place where fear and joy occupy the same space. The women were invited by the angel to come and see the place where he lay. They had seen Jesus work miracles. They had heard him preach. They had seen him on the cross. They saw him die, and they had seen him laid there in the tomb. They knew they were in the right place. But now they saw that he was no longer there. The angel told them to go quickly and tell the disciples. In obedience, they ran to tell his disciples, and Jesus met them while they were on the way. They became the first witnesses of Jesus' resurrection. They became the first witnesses of the greatest event in history. So why was that honor given to them? Well, when they met him, when they kind of ran into him, and he said, "Greetings." Just like that. When they met him, they were in the midst of obediently doing what the angel told them to do. It was their faithfulness and love and then their obedience that paved the way for them to be the first to see Jesus risen from the dead. First they saw the place where he lay, then they saw him, no longer dead, but very much alive. Then they went to tell his disciples. They had been invited to come and see. Now they went and told the disciples likewise to come and see. For the disciples to come to Galilee and see. And when they do see him in Galilee, he tells the disciples also to go and tell, to make disciples, teaching them to obey everything he had commanded. So when the women saw him, and also when the disciples saw him on the mountain in Galilee later on, they worshiped him. So earlier, during his trials, the accusations against him had to do with his identity. Was he the Son of God? Was he the Messiah? Was he the King of the Jews? When he was on the cross, he was cruelly taunted by the bystanders, the religious leaders, and the crucified thieves, saying things like, "Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God." The central message of their taunts was, if you are who you say you are, the Son of God, the Messiah, the King of the Jews, then you can surely rescue yourself from the cross, or God can rescue you. God will rescue you if he cares about you, right? To them, the fact that he was not being rescued, or not rescuing himself, was proof that he was a fraud, that he was not the Son of God. But in fact, God did rescue Jesus from death, not by preventing his death, but by raising him up on the third day, just like he had predicted multiple times. His miraculous resurrection proves that he is who he said he is. He is the Son of God, the Messiah, and not just the King of Israel, the King of the Jews, but the King of all the earth. As he said in verse 18, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me." He's the King of all the earth. His resurrection proves his identity as the Son of God. And if it proved his identity as the Son of God, then what's the proper response? So the women fall down and worship before him. What else could you do in the presence of the Son of God when it becomes totally clear that's who he is? Later, his disciples do likewise. So the believing women and the believing disciples fell down in worship. The unbelieving guards fell down like dead men. I think I'd rather be a believer who falls down in worship. What do you think? I'd rather be a believer and have a proper fear of God, afraid yet joyful and worshipful, than to be an unbeliever and have nothing but deathly terror when God's power is made manifest. He was raised to new life that he might give new life to us. So he was not merely resuscitated for another go-round in a mortal body. That's you might call that resurrection, but it's a temporary matter. He brought back some dead people. As far as we know, it seems likely that they died again, that they were still in mortal bodies. They were not perfected. They were not given resurrection bodies yet. So there's resurrection, and then there's resuscitation. He was truly resurrected to imperishable life in an imperishable body. And the day will come when he will likewise raise us up to new life in him completely. The day will come when all who believe will be like him, when we'll receive imperishable bodies. But more importantly, on that day, he'll completely purge our souls of corruption. No more sin, no more diseases, no more injuries, no more death, no more doubts, no more evil, We will rise to new life with complete shalom, complete wholeness and peace in body, soul, and spirit. Fear not, but come see and worship the risen King. Then go and tell the disciples. If you are a believer, that is, if you have come to him, if you've come to him, then you've come to see. If you've come to him, then I bet you have seen. You may not have seen Jesus with your eyes. You may not have had spectacular visions of him, but I bet that you've seen what he's done. You don't see the wind, but you see what it does. You see the trees swaying around, the leaves or the snowflakes blowing in the wind, the smoke streaming away. You hear its sound and you feel its force, if it's forceful enough. We might not see our Lord until the next life, but we see what he does and we feel the force of it. We see lives transformed. We experience his direction for our lives. We experience his provision. He breathes new life into us, into our souls. We live in a fallen world in a state of decay, physical, spiritual, and moral decay. But when we come to him, when we truly come and fall before him in spiritual worship, we are renewed. We are given new life. Romans 12:1-2 says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, because of the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. We have an opportunity when we present our bodies as a living sacrifice to be transformed, for our minds to be renewed. If we conform to this world, then we're stuck in a pattern of continual decay and corruption. If we come to him in spiritual worship, we are caught up in continual renewal in new life. Which do you think is better? I have an idea. If you're a believer, then you've come to him and you've seen, maybe not his face, but you've seen what he does. And if you've come and seen what he does, then you can go and tell others. Like the women came and saw, then went and told, and the disciples likewise later came to Galilee and saw him, and then went unto all the world to tell about it. So here's the question. What have you seen? Have you experienced his goodness? Have you seen lives transformed? Has your heart been made new? Kind of needs that on a regular basis, doesn't it? Has the Lord been at work within you to set you free from the things that hold you down? Has the Lord provided for you? People may tell their friends about a great restaurant they ate at. They may tell their friends about their favorite tea, if you're like my mom. People may read reviews of products they may want to purchase. They may be influenced by, videos, maybe even my videos. Well, not very many people. To try paddling a section of river that they haven't paddled before, or to buy some gear for kayak camping. Our reviews and testimonials can have an influence on others. But what testimony of God's goodness and his presence do we have to share? If we've come and seen his goodness, then we can go and tell. So I want to give you an opportunity not just to ask questions and make comments, but also to share what you've seen. How has the Lord been at work in your life or in the lives of people you know? Any questions, comments, or testimonies? When it comes to the experience of the last 7 months for me, which I could say a lot about that, but the a lot of you have long-standing relationships, but for me, navigating a new relationship, long awaited for, there's a lot of learning there, and learning to get along. But there's also this experience that happens when when we're in tune with the Spirit, when we've really sought the Lord, and we're where we need to be. That's just an amazing experience. The unity there, and I knew it in concept before that if one person is united with the Lord and another person is united with the Lord, then what is the unity like between the people? Much better than it would be otherwise. But to have that experience in the real world is pretty amazing.